we're going to be doing in this video is setting up our machine ready to do some accurate scant quarter inch piecing, ready to do our Moda quilt challenge for 2020. You can see that on the quilt behind me. The first thing that we're going to look at is our needle plate. Most of our modern machines come with the ability to do a very wide zigzag or decorative stitch, but when we're looking to do a straight stitch, that ability is lost. So we need to help the machine create as straight stitch as we possibly can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the 9mm needle plate off this machine, and we're going to put on a straight stitch needle plate. Most sewing machines will have a straight stitch needle plate available to them. I'm going to replace this and pop it onto my machine. You can see the hole that makes it a straight stitch needle plate as opposed to the 9mm. I'm going to tell this machine that it's got a straight stitch needle plate on it, simply because I don't want the machine by accident, because I've forgotten and had a cup of coffee, doing a zigzag stitch. For piecing, because we want to be penetrating the fabric in a straight line and we are using a woven fabric, it is more appropriate to use a sharp needle. The needle that I'm actually going to be using today is a Microtex 70 needle. I use this because the thread that I'm going to be using is also relatively fine. Today I'm going to be using the Dove Aurifil 50 weight thread. One of my other favourite threads is the Metla, and this one is in a neutral colour, which is the colour number 537. Both of these threads are what we call cross-wound, so the thread needs to be delivered to the machine from the top of the cone. So with the cone, we will be raising the thread this way with the use of a thread cone holder like that, and it will come up and over the machine like that. With the Aurifil, I can place that on the machine. And the way I will do that is I will remove the orange tag at the bottom, which identifies the colour, and I will be placing it on my machine like that. And I will be placing either the medium spool holder or the small spool holder on the machine, making sure that it doesn't rotate. We are now going to look at quarter-inch piecing feet. Even Bernina have several different quarter-inch feet. This is for the different generations of the machines and the width of the feed dogs that are on the machine. My old machine just takes the plain and simple foot 37, which is a quarter-inch in the different, from the central needle position to the edge of the foot. You can see here it also has notches in the front, the middle and behind. For those of us who have a slight wobble in our stitching, they then brought a flange out on the right hand side. This means that you're guiding the fabric up against the side. The next foot that they brought out was the 97, which was designed for 9mm machines. The 9mm foot version has a larger area on the left hand side of the foot, which allows better coverage of the feed dogs. There's also a small area here behind the needle position to allow better coverage of the feed dogs, while maintaining a good visibility in the front of the foot up to the needle. The next, and I think the best quarter-inch foot, was when Bernina brought out the dual feed version. This is for the machines that have the dual feed functionality, which is the integral walking foot. Not as good as a walking foot, but still wonderful to have for your piecing. Okay, today we will be using this alongside our straight stitch needle plate. So I'll just pop that one on. Most importantly, one of the things that we must do is engage the dual feed. Otherwise, your fabric is not going to feed through particularly well when you're piecing. So now we have set up our machine with the correct needle, a good foot, the correct needle plate. We need to give ourselves a good sewing surface. So I'm actually going to be able to put the fabric to the needle in the correct position. So the sew table has now gone on. My Aurifil thread is here waiting to be threaded. I always ensure that the needle is in the fully upright position, so the check lever is in the correct place, and my presser foot is in the up position. So on this machine I can press this button and press it again, and that will ensure the needle is now in the correct place for me, and I can raise my presser foot. I am now going to take my thread and I'm going to provide the tension so I know that the thread is going to be going into the correct places, because as we're threading we need to ensure the thread is going into the tension discs fully, around the check lever, in on the left hand side, out on the right hand side, left hand side, and then through there, through this little gap here, and then we need to thread the needle around, across, through, down, cut the thread and away. This machine has had the additional thread cutter added to it. Some of the series have them on already, but they are an additional function on a 7 series machine. There we go. We now have the machine threaded and ready to go for some piecing. This is an exercise that I learnt many years ago when I was teaching regularly about how to ensure and practice a good scant 1/4 inch seam. What I have done, and I've actually done these manually, is cut 4 strips of 1.5 inch wide fabric, and it is important in this exercise that the fabric is cut accurately. I can then piece these seams together and just check on my 1/4 inch seam. So I would put that through and just work my 1/4 inch as I would normally. Now, many people often talk to me about the fabric being gobbled at the beginning of stitching. The way I always work when I'm piecing is with a sew on, sew off piece, and you can see this is one that I've done and used quite a lot already. And I pop that onto my machine part way through, and I will then do some sewing. Okay, feed dogs need to be engaged. There we go, one reason that the fabric won't move. So I'm actually going to start this machine, and you can see now it's quite happily sewing, and I'm going to stop. My needle is landing currently in the up position. That's not really what I want for piecing, so I'm going to tell the machine to drop the needle, and each time now it sews it will always stop in the down position for me. This machine currently has a hover on it, which is not what I want for piecing, so I'm actually going to quickly go into my settings and change it so that I've lost that hover. There we go. I'm also going to reduce my stitch length fractionally. Okay, just to about 2. There we go. And now I can place my fabric up to the machine in the correct position for doing my 1/4 inch seam. I'm using the hand on this machine today, but we'll give it a go and see what happens. Okay, don't be frightened to stop. Check your fabric and make sure it's aligned correctly to carry on. Okay. Having now finished piecing those 4 strips together with a 1/4 inch seam, in theory I should now have a 4.5 inch strip, because you've got 1 inch in the centre too, and then you'll have 1.25 either side because you've still got the seam allowances included. I'm going to place the ruler up against this piece, and unfortunately you will see that it is a fraction under the 4.5 that we wanted. That is because the machine and the foot are sewing at this stage with the fabric on the edge of the side of the foot, or if you were using the dreaded 57 with a flange, at 1/4 of an inch. We need to be lessening in that to allow for the turnover of the seam here. Think about when you're making piping and you have a big heavy piece of piping cord and the fold of the fabric coming over. So to compensate for that, we want to use what we call a scant 1/4 inch, which means that we need to eyeball just 1/fraction of a thread width in to the left hand side of the foot. And I will show you that when we're piecing this one. Okay, so if I pop that one in, and we will then just look, and you will be able to see that I'm 1 breadth into the left. I did this earlier with another one, and here you will see that you will have just a fractionally narrower seam each time, but when I place the ruler onto the fabric, I've actually got a very accurate 1/4 inch. Thank you for watching this video. I hope these little hints and tips with your 1/4 inch seam, scant 1/4 inch seam, are helpful, and that you can use this as a tip for successful piecing as you go forward using squares and triangles as well as the straight lines.